Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode number 132. Still kind of impresses me that we've come this far. Tonight, we are going to have the GX show, our gamer experience show, the final one for the month of February, where we talk about the games we've been playing. And I must say, we have an interesting mix of games on the agenda. Not too many that are like what I would call big name games. I mean, we have a few, but they're ones we've been playing for a while now. But a neat little mix, I think. Joining me tonight is a gamer that goes by many names, but we know him here on E2KG as Agasicles Stamus. How are you doing, Agasicles?
Hello, I'm good. It's a late night.
Awesome. And I forgot to mention, I'll be your host. I'm SwissGuard. DB and Osiris Prime have the night off tonight. So, all right. So our PickZ PlayZ from the last episode that Prime and I did was to explore what we had out there in terms of game streaming services. So Prime said, everybody pretty much is a member of something. I went ahead and renewed my subscription to Xbox GamePass for PC for at least 1 month, and just pick a game on the service and and play it. So I see that Agasicles went with probably one that you've played in the past. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the truth in advertising is honestly, this is a game that is on Xbox Game Pass, but that's not how I bought the game before Xbox Game Pass ever came out. But it was what I had planned in my schedule, and it's on Game Pass, so I felt it was representative of the assignment.
That's true, and it's definitely representative of your taste in gaming. So, why don't you give an overview of Dirt 4?
And so away we go. I guess one of the things, as you mentioned, it's, part of the point of this assignment was to kind of explore what was out there in Xbox Game Pass and maybe come back and have a bit of a commentary on that and why, it's a good thing or not a good thing. One of the things that I find that is interesting about Xbox Game Pass when we look at the types of genres of games that are on there is if you are, Prime mentioned, I think on the episode you guys were on together, that he's not a huge racing game fan. And so one of the cool things about Xbox Game Pass is if you're not a big racing game fan, this is your opportunity to go out and try some racing games periodically just to get a taste of it and then put it away with no obligation. Another thing that it's good for is racing games are sometimes a good venue for multiplayer. And so, both Prime and I were part of an online adults gaming group, casual adult gamers, and racing games were fairly popular, and that this would have been a way that he could have had access to those games to play with the group on Friday night game nights, but not plunk down $60 or more to have several racing games. And then the other thing is, if you are a racing game fan, Xbox Game Pass seems to be a great way for you to just pay a singular price, as long as they maintain this relationship with Codemasters. Because I kind of feel like between Microsoft themselves and Codemasters, you kind of have the large base of your racing game output each year covered, right? You're going to get Forza Motorsport, you're going to get Forza Horizon, and you're potentially going to get everything that Codemasters puts out, which is predominantly the next iteration of the Dirt series, and then the Formula One release for that year. So, racing fans and sometimey racing consumers might be able to get a lot out of the genre by being subscribers to Xbox Game Pass. So,
real
go
quick
ahead.
before you get in the game, and not to like seep a little deep dive into our GX show, but it's interesting that you mentioned Xbox Game Pass as far as for racers. You said you pretty much get everything that you need in the subscription. That's why I'm not really a big fan of these things, because I like to I kind of like to own the game. I don't like it to feel nebulous, so to speak. Um, but for like a racing game and for your Madden and sports franchises, it doesn't like, oh man, I don't have Madden 2013 anymore. Like I feel like my library is incomplete now. You know what I mean? It it makes sense as far as like the seasonal aspect. So that's kind of I think a pretty good point in the plus column for subscribing to these things. Really quickly, I know you mentioned your Forzas and everything, but on the PlayStation side, you're a PlayStation Plus member as well, right?
Yep, correct.
So
Yep.
do they have anything to compare?
Well, I don't think. I mean, I personally, in my mind, I don't equate Game Pass to PlayStation Plus. I line PlayStation Plus up with games with gold. Um, so
I'm
it's
sorry, it'd be PlayStation Now. Excuse me.
yeah. I am not a PlayStation Now subscriber. So, and the problem with PlayStation Now is, I guess it would be interesting to see if Codemasters puts their games over there. That I'm not sure. Obviously, the issue with PlayStation Now is they have not yet lined up their business model to be the same as Microsoft with regards to first-party games being available day and date. So, an iteration of Gran Turismo might come to PlayStation Now, but it might come to PlayStation Now, a year or several years after that game releases. So that would be where I would see kind of the slippage and the differential between PlayStation Now and Game Pass.
All right. All right. So let's actually talk about what you were playing. So
Yeah. So this was Dirt 4, and if you're not familiar with Codemasters and kind of how they do business, as far as I can tell, and I may be a little bit off, I think the Dirt franchise has been around since sometime in the, I want to say, very late 90s, maybe early 2000s. I got into the series on PC, back when I first started delving into playing games with wheel and pedals. And it was titled the Colin McRae series. Unfortunately, Colin McRae passed away, and so eventually they removed his name from the franchise. As of late, and I think the Dirt franchise is on an 18-month release cycle. It's a weird one. It's not annualized, but it seems to come out. If the last iteration of Dirt came out like in the holiday season, then the next one seems to come out like early spring or summer. Of 2 calendar years past. So it doesn't. They don't come out. Consecutive iterations of the series don't seem to come out in the same season, so that's why it feels like it's an 18-month cycle. Whereas the Formula One series is annualized. The other thing that they do is there seems to be this TikTok going on where one iteration will be a little more arcadey, and then another iteration will be more full-on hardcore simulation. This creates a very interesting dynamic because the fan base is wildly bifurcated, and there's always like these very quick, low-intensity conflicts, between the two parties whenever a game comes out. And I'm sure that you have fans who buy, one iteration and then skip one and then get the next one. I like both iterations, so I played the predecessor to this, which was Dirt Rally, and then the follow-up to Dirt 4, which was Dirt Rally 2.0. Dirt Rally and Dirt Rally 2.0 are definitely two games that are more in the hardcore, driving simulation vein, whereas Dirt 4 is a little more arcadey. And then the predecessor to Dirt Rally was Dirt 3, and that's where you had, I can't remember the game, Kent Block or whatever, who's like the Hoonigan guy from YouTube, the Gymkhana guy who does all the stunts and drift whatever, with the car. And so you will have these purist iterations of Dirt, which are purely rally events, and then these alternating year iterations. You will have, you'll have hill climbs and cross country races. Rally essentially is a the real sport is a game of time, and so cars race individually on given courses, simply trying to better each other's, have the lowest time. In these alternating year iterations, the more arcadey versions, you will have, wheel to wheel racing and competitive races, just kind of like you would in another game. So Dirt 4 kind of follows that pattern. You have those types of events which don't actually exist in the rally racing sport. But then you have a lot of just straight up stage to stage time trial type racing like you actually have in World Rally racing. The physics model is a little, I don't want to say dumbed down or softer, but it's not. It is not wired quite as tightly as the Dirt Rally. As the Dirt Rally physics engine is. Game looks gorgeous. Still years hence, I'm playing it with a. Excuse me, sorry. I'm playing it on a NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1070 Founders Edition, and I'm much more these days getting into letting the GeForce experience kind of auto tune games that it has profiles for. So I set it to that. Like I said, the game looks great. I'm playing it on a 27-inch curved 1080p monitor with my Thrustmaster wheel and pedal set. It's been a while since I played that game, and it took me a good amount of time to get settled into the wheel and pedals setup. Largely because of specifically how I drive, because I drive with both feet on the pedals at the same time. Which is a style that some Formula One racers use, but basically you're actually using the braking motion on the car as part of your steering control, as well as speed control. So, but yeah, I had a good time with it. Trying to think. There's one design nit that I don't like about this game, and that is it's weird for some reason. In order to manage your vehicle inventory, your garage essentially, you have to back completely out of the event menu. So if you're in career mode and you just wrapped up an event and you're selecting your next event to go to, and your next event is in a different car class, if you want to buy a new car, at that point you have to back out of the event menu that you're in. You then have to back out of the career menu that you're in, and then you have to back out of the mode selection menu that you're in, all the way back out to the initial screen.
It's like linear.
Yeah, it's or hierarchical. It's you're in these lower level menus, and you have to pop all the way back up to the top. Not only to be able to manage your vehicle, but actually to change like your livery on your car or your sponsorships and things like that. So that's a little aggravating. But
did you play against other people online, or were you just kind of going solo and playing against the CPU or beating your own times?
I just play against the CPU. The Dirt series has for a little while incorporated a thing called, I think, RaceNet, which is a set of leaderboards, so you can compare your time to other people. But again, like, I just don't like comparing my time to like several 100,000 other complete strangers around the world. Like, I don't know what the point of that is. If I played the game on Xbox, and this might actually be on the PC version of the game, since those are all integrated with Xbox Live now. Xbox games have historically always had, with games like this, the ability for you to see how you rank, like, against your friends, right? Or, when you and I would play Need for Speed 3, I could go in and see, how my times compared specifically to you and other people on my friends list. So I haven't tried that yet. But no, I've been playing completely in single-player standalone mode.
All right. Well, cool. So I've kind of, oddly enough, so that was, you were on Xbox Game Pass for PC, or did you have that on Steam or something?
So it's a game I purchased through Steam, but I played the game is available on Xbox Game Pass for PC. I did check and verify that before I selected that game, but yeah.
All right, so I did use Xbox Game Pass for PC, and I also picked a game up that's not a recent release. I think I hinted at this on the last episode, but I played a little bit of Ori and the Blind Forest because the definitive edition is on Xbox Game Pass for PC.
Now, and did you select this game specifically because you had been planning on playing the
Will
sequel,
o' the
right?
Wisps.
Which
Yeah.
just came out this month.
Did it come out this month? I thought they delayed it. Um,
Go ahead and talk. I'll look it up.
all right. Oh, okay. The release date was literally like 2 weeks ago, February 11th. So yeah, basically, I wanted to the Will o' the Wisps game caught my eye at one of the last E3 or something, and a lot of folks in my family like the 2D side scroller type games. So I figured I'd like to play this at some point. I know it's out on Switch, Ori and the Blind Forest, but I haven't purchased it or anything. And what you said as far as like using these Game Pass subscriptions and whatnot, I like to use it. I will not subscribe and keep my subscription active. But if something pops up where I want to try it out for the whatever, I don't mind paying $1. Right now, I only pay $1 or $5 to get a month access just to try some stuff out. And my strategy is I'm not going to use it as an exclusive thing. I view it more as a rental. So if you remember like way back in the day, you go to Blockbuster, it was like $3 or $4 to rent like an N64 game for a weekend. And so for me, like, hey, $1 or $5 for a month, and I have a lot of games that I could try out. That's how I want to do it. But I don't like leaving my subscription active. It's just not kind of how I play games, and I don't want to feel obligated to play games on the service to justify the price. So I'm not going to keep it off. But this was a case where I'm interested in the franchise. Okay, I'll try it out. And if I like it, to be honest, I'm probably going to pick it up on the Switch just because with the other thing with Xbox Game Pass is like I have to be logged in to have access, for access to the game. And I don't necessarily want my kids going on my Windows 10 profile to have access to the game. This is one that, they would want to play. I know one kid, if I let him and he has access to my profile, all of a sudden I start seeing some like Amazon purchases pop up on my email, and it's like, oh dang, I got to make sure that they're locked out of that. So with Steam, it's a little bit different. My older kid, like my oldest, has a Steam account, so like I can buy a game and like that access filters into other players. But this is kind of scoped. So yeah, that's my mentality for going towards it. If I like it, I'll probably pick it up on the Switch. It's a better platform for us. But as far as the game itself, it's very pretty. I like the art style. Have you played it? I don't know if it's kind of your thing.
Nope, it is definitely not an Agasicles game. I
Right.
have not. I have not played it. That's not to say that I don't sometimes play 2D side-scrolling action games. I played Strider a little while ago, and I thought that was pretty interesting. So one of my questions for you is, and there was a retro game that I talked to you guys one time about that I think Bleed that I played that was a game on Steam. Did you play with mouse and keyboard or controller?
No, I got the Bluetooth version of an Xbox One controller that I basically bought exclusively. I don't have an Xbox. I play it for playing Game Pass and some games on Steam that would be more amenable to controllers, such as like Ace Combat. But so I played it with my controller, and I was going in expecting like the art style and everything. I know is a little bit more like the gameplay or the story is a little bit more wistful. I was expecting more of like a fairy tale esque story than a Rayman. But honestly, I was expecting a Rayman Legends type experience.
So it's wistful, but isn't there? I mean, are there kind of sorrowful, emotional drum beats at certain points as well, or is it entirely?
It starts off darker than I anticipated. But not only did it start off a little bit darker than it's not when I say wistful and like fairy tale aspect, I don't mean like Disney pop fairy tale. I mean like old school Brothers Grimm fairy tale type stuff. A little bit darker. And it did kind of catch that tone. It was you start off and you die. So it's like okay. But yeah, that was a little not too surprising. I didn't know much about the story. It just that was my impression based off seeing screenshots and whatnot. What did surprise me was the gameplay was not like a Rayman Legends or Donkey Kong Country Return, like the new Donkey Kong countries. Those are very much you start at the left side of the level and you're going from point A to point B at the end of the level. Okay, these are Ori was much more of you have a sprawling 2D map, really, and you're making your way through and you have to collect some stuff. There's some gateways that like block you and you may have to go find objects in the map and they let you warp around. So it's very much like a throwback, I think, to more like adventure games back in the day than like in the pre 3D era.
So you feel like you'd kind of liken it to like a Pitfall Harry kind of game almost?
I can't really speak directly to that because I've never played Pitfall.
I mean, more so than like you would, because one of my questions I was going to ask you is, would you call this a platformer?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that aspect, and I was already starting to like unlock some abilities that let me like jump along the side of the wall and double jump and stuff. So there's definitely like the platformer skill, but you do have some attacks, and I mean, it's very smooth. Like your character Ori is very agile, and I enjoyed the mechanics of it. But it was it was more than just the point A to point B platform. I mean, it's a platformer in that all those games from those 2D era had that level of it in there, unless you were playing like an old school RPG. But those old adventure action games, they all kind of had that. And just the scope of the map. I'm trying to think if the old school Metroids were kind of like that. I want to say it's been a long time since I played another game like that.
Well, that was kind of a place I was going to go to, was to ask you, would you, if is this in the Metroidvania vein, even though the artistic style might be kind of a lot different?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say it's like just a Metroidvania with like a skin of Ori on it, but it definitely feels closer to that than I was going in expecting a Donkey Kong Country. And so it's not like a 2D Mario or Donkey Kong. It skews more, I think, on the spectrum towards Metroidvania. And that was surprising to me, but also a little bit welcome because I think it adds a little bit more depth to the game than just like conquering this level. And I mean, I guess I don't want to disparage like Donkey Kong countries and the Raymans. They make up for that by just like doing kind of quirky things with the levels, but that didn't fit the tone of this game really. So I think if it had this tone but was just an A to B, I think there'd probably be a little bit of a depth missing.
My sense of it is, and I've played Rayman Legends, but that game, and Crash Bandicoot, and those games are just highly mechanistic. There's no. I don't know that there's any character-based joy involved in the actual level progression. I think the nostalgia and the character pieces come in kind of the little sound effects that they make, and maybe little things that happen in kind of these mini cutscenes in between levels. I feel like from what I've watched of Ori that there's almost the level progression and the specific sequence of actions that you use to get through each one, which I think is different on each level, right? It's not. It's
Uh, I haven't progressed super far, but I've already experienced the fact that I have to unlock abilities, and like I got to a certain point on the map, and I couldn't go anywhere else. But by getting to that point, I eventually unlocked a new ability that allowed me to progress to new areas. So there's definitely like, yeah, those gateways there. It's not just a pure, does what your tool set is and go for it. Like
right. I feel like there's more kind of story elements woven into what you have to do and how you have to progress through a level. That there's a little more narrative kind of
right.
conveyed.
It's not. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like with like Donkey Kong and Rayman, it's relatively arbitrary if you look at like what you're actually. It's fun, and like that's why I use the term quirky, but it's relatively arbitrary. There's no like story-based reason why you're going on like a dragon flying through the air, like in Rayman, while they're playing like electric guitars in the background. Is it fun and cool? Yeah, but that's what it is. With this, they definitely like those little gateways that they have. Like it's all kind of woven into like the, bringing the light back or whatever. So I enjoyed it, and I'm probably, I'll just keep my eyes peeled for like a stale or something, and I'll probably pick it up, and I think it's going to be popular with my family. One other thing I will note is the the beginning. There's like a prologue, and you're talking about you seeing the narrative. I was not expecting as much narrative. I was like, it's like Metal Gear Solid. I mean, like we're sitting. I'm like, wow, this is like I was going in expecting a Rayman or Donkey Kong like platformer, and then getting 10 minutes of narrative that you have some like moving the character from one side of the screen to the other, and then it opens up more narrative was actually a little bit jarring. So that was another thing. But like I said, mechanically, it's been fun. There's a little bit. I like the Metroidvania more feel of it, and so yeah, that was a nice little activity, which is I think the perfect reason for doing these PickZ PlayZ assignments. Playing a little bit of something that maybe you normally wouldn't have gravitated to or would have skipped over. So.
All right, so I'm seeing that gameplay is estimated to be around 10 hours. Do you feel like you've I mean, do you feel like you're like halfway through the game at this point, or
Let's say I'm about 15 to 20% of the way through the game then.
okay, gotcha.
So
And,
enough to, I feel like, get a feel for it. But
right, and then has there been any kind of like mythology or lore that you've picked up on in the storytelling so far?
I mean, I can tell there's, I guess, a bit more depth, but like it, unless there's some more that's coming, like it's enough where that's an interesting thing to tie it together. But I'm not like going to be seeking out Ori and the Blind Forest Wikipedia fandom pages. So, all right. Okay, so the next one I wanted to get to, I think that'll be it for tonight's PickZ PlayZ, and I don't know what we're going to do for the next PickZ PlayZ. Maybe we'll think of something between now and the end of the show. But for the regular GX rundown, you played on. I don't know if we've even actually had games from this platform yet on the GX show. I'm sure we've mentioned a few.
We have either once before, or I talked about some maybe in the end of the year episodes. But yeah, I think maybe the last GX show right before the superlative awards, I at least talked about Apple Arcade in general. I'm not sure if I talked about any specific games.
All right, so why don't you tell us about the Apple Arcade game that you played?
Yeah, so this is overall as part of my, I guess and there's been some hitch in my step as I've gotten into this, and it's, it's definitely morphed a little bit. So I think we talked about in the end of the year game show, and maybe during the decade in review, definitely in the decade in review episodes, that this year of new consoles dropping isn't just about new consoles. What is probably going to play out over this year and in ensuing years is that there's going to be much more ado about services, not just new hardware platforms. Essentially, new services are becoming the equivalents of new consoles. And so I kind of have on my assignment list to spend some time throughout the year checking out offerings on Apple Arcade, GeForce Now, Google Stadia, Project X Cloud, and maybe one other thing. And so I spent some time with Apple Arcade this week. Played it on my iPad Mini, and the game that I went after was Oceanhorn 2, which is in a lot of ways very similar to Breath of the Wild, I think, just in terms of its overall mechanics. There are some limitations because it's an Apple Arcade game. I find it very interesting what designers choose to make a limitation. And so one of the big things that is kind of annoying in the design of this game is that you don't just have like a straight up jump button. A lot of getting up to other levels is a lot of mantling. And you can only mantle something. What I do like the fact that, because I've mentioned before how I have this pet peeve that, like, here you are in a game, playing a character that is capable of leaping, 120 feet up in the air, but then you will encounter obstacles in the game that for some reason, just for an arbitrary reason, because they don't want you to go into an area, you can't, climb over a table, right? Yeah. It's just very disrupting. And so I do really appreciate that there is and there's actually a little tutorial dialogue that pops up at some point early on in the game that tells you, hey, you can climb over things that are below shoulder length or below shoulder height. And I really appreciated just having that direct comparative statement. And I wish so many other games would do that. Like, here are the things you can climb over, and here are the things you can't climb over, right? To remove the just random chaos out of it. So this is a game where you start off, and fairly early on you get a sword, a shield, but you also have like a gun. Now the gun, in some ways, I think is like I guess it's probably your Oceanhorn, and so it fires. It at least starts off firing large. I guess I hate to call it a water gun, but it's essentially a water gun.
So it's Super Mario Sunshine.
Yes, yeah, you can think of it that way. The gun mechanics are interesting just in that even in the opening stages, the lowliest level enemies, you only have 5 or 6 rounds in this thing at a time, and I haven't absolutely determined how ammo replenishment happens, but at least at the start you have those 5 or 6 shots and that's it. The lowliest enemies that you're presented at the beginning, which are crabs, can often take as many as 3 shots, and so it's pretty much just a weapon that at least at the outset will just slow somebody down to give you time to reposition. Combat is a little frantic at the beginning. Again, the lowliest enemies are crabs. You have a sword, but one of the mechanics is like whenever you hit a crab, it can immediately counterattack. And so basically attacking a crab head on is just a guaranteed way for you to lose all of your hit points. And so the immediate gaming mechanic or combat mechanic you have to learn is to hit them one time, dodge, and then try and circle. The most effective thing is to circle around behind them, which you have to do really quickly.
Does it feel like a Z-targeting Zelda movement?
No, I don't think it's quite that bad. It's just that there's some gymnastics associated with it. And if this is what you mean, you tell me if I'm thinking of it the wrong way. There's some gymnastics involved because you have to circle around them while also concurrently moving the joystick that controls the camera to try and keep the camera pointed at them. And then once you're behind them and you hit them, this will also happen, I think, if you hit them from the side, or if you hit them from the front a sufficient number of times, eventually they will fall over on their shell, on their backs essentially, and then they can't get back up. So that's when you can kind of finish them off. But they have a surprisingly high number of hit points to be your introductory enemy. So, so there's that. And basically, at least so far, it's just a bunch of running around a level, finding the individual things that you need to unlock things, or, basically to unlock things is all I've seen so far. I had to find one key to get into a space so that I could go into the space and get some artifact, and then take that artifact back to some other door or series of doors to set something free there. But I guess what's most impressive about the game is it's one of the things that I'm seeing that's exposing, myself and other gamers to the high degree of graphical fidelity that can be implemented on these mobile games now on an iPad. As well as, my biggest problem with mobile games has always been, I've always felt like their game design was always a shade, lower or 2 levels lower, the minimum threshold required to gain my interest from a game mechanics standpoint. I think that barrier has been thoroughly removed. Being able to play a game like this with my PlayStation 4 controller, again, just makes it much more akin to, a full-blown current generation console release. Now, DBQ and I were kicking this around a little bit in the Discord, and one of the things he mentioned was he compared it to a last generation RPG, and there's elements of that are true. There are elements of that I think are not, where the game and games like this on Apple Arcade exceed even that comparison to a last gen game. The games on Generation 7 console hardware were generally predominantly 720p. The iPad Mini, even my iPad Mini 4, which came out in 2016, I think, or maybe 2015, I think I bought mine in 2016, has a resolution that's higher than 720p, right? So I'm playing a game in higher resolution than I played most games on my Xbox 360. So there's little things like that I think the portability and immersiveness of the game, I think, also exceed, that experience of playing things on a console. So pretty enjoyable, and again, it's a game that I have access to because I pay like $5 a month, but it's very comparable to, in many cases probably exceeds, games that are sold out for $60 a piece to play, on consoles.
I watched the trailer, and it definitely, like, the character models and everything. Like, the first thing I thought when I saw it was Zelda, so it's interesting that you came right out and put that in there. And then it definitely looked like the character models didn't look like current gen character models, so I can see where DB. But even you mentioning, though, not having a jump button, so I imagine that means, like, as you run next to an edge, he'll automatically jump off of it or something. If you're like,
it's weird. I guess the way jumping is invoked is there's some kind of weird spatial collision detection where he will automatically jump.
That's like what Zelda used to do before Breath of the Wild.
Right.
It's like a big deal that they put a jump button in Breath of the Wild.
And what I don't understand about it is it's not a programming limitation, right? Based on the IDE, right, that you develop games for on the iPad. It's not a hardware limit. Like, it seems very arbitrary, and maybe the only thing that it's attributable to is because they were mimicking that Zelda design so completely and entirely as their blueprint that they actually, left a low grade quality of life thing in there that shouldn't be in there. it makes it akin to one of my other pet peeves in games like Destiny 2 and Halo. Well, actually, just Destiny 2 from that Bungie lineage, where for some reason they decided that they were going to control whenever your flashlight gets turned on, and I'm like, no. Look, depending on what monitor I'm playing on and what my lighting is in my room, there are times where there are spaces that are too dark for me to see. Right? I would just like a button. You gave me a button for Halo so I could turn my headlamp on. Please give me a button to turn my headlamp on in Destiny. So yeah, it's just a weird kind of very arbitrary design choice.
What about the story?
The story. I mean, I don't think that the story is bad. I just think that from what I've seen of it so far, it's just very common. It's character grows up, gets sent out on a quest, collects weapons, finds friends, parties up. Like I haven't been like super engaged by the story at this point.
All right. All right. So I guess we can move on. The other like newish. This is the last kind of new game. The rest of the games we've all played in the past, but DB Prime and I got together and played the Bleeding Edge beta. It's available on Xbox GamePass, and so this was kind of a multi-layered experiment. One is we're just playing the beta of a new game that's coming out, and two, DB and Prime were both on Xboxes, and I was on my PC, and we were seeing how that would work if that would match everybody up. From a technical perspective, it worked pretty well. We had a little bit of trouble when I was the party leader, like trying to invite them into the game, or when DB was the leader. He invited me in the game. I got an alert on Windows. Hey, you've been invited. I clicked accept, and it didn't actually bring me into his party in the game. I was able to invite them, however, and then I just made him the party leader. So that was the one hiccup. But as far as the app on Windows 10, we're all three of us were in a party together. I was chatting with them. Everything was cool. It was pretty seamless. So
Now
kudos to there.
Now that alert, because I've often found this to be an extreme pet peeve of mine, is the alert you get comes up in Windows.
Yes, it is a Windows 10 notification.
Not in the game. And so it pops into your sys tray, and depending on how well the game handles it, your game will sometimes pop at a full screen view. And so you go in to answer the notification. You're outside the game. You're back on your Windows desktop. Then dumpster diving into the Xbox app. And then once you get in there and accept it, then you have to clamber back out of that UI and crosswalk yourself back over into the game, which
I clicked on the notification and then I said accept, and then it tried to launch the game again, even though I had already opened the game. So that, yes, I agree that it's clunky, but once, like as far as us being in an Xbox party together, that was fine. And once we got in the game and I just invited them through the game, it was okay. But
and no problems getting. So I mean, so were you guys in an Xbox party, or were you in a?
Yeah, like it's literally like I have to sign in with my Xbox gamer tag, and it's the same. Yeah, so we formed that. I don't know, I forget what the term Xbox uses, but formed a group, whatever. We're chatting in and out of the game through the Xbox dashboard, so to speak.
Okay, gotcha. Right.
So that was good. As far as the game itself, I was not impressed. So Bleeding Edge is, I guess it's aiming for like the Overwatch kind of team competitive type game genre. It's not a battle royale. It's aiming for like more like an Overwatch thing. And but they want to go with melee combat. So you you have different character classes, really, like your healer, a couple of longer range type people, but mostly like you have some guys that use a sword or whatever, and you're kind of pushed into being much more closer up with your enemies, and it's third person action uh combat thing. But I don't know, I just didn't think it worked. Just from the start, like, I hate the character designs. um they look like they were I mean, I guess I'm not the target demographic, but the character designs were like what like a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old would like imagine is like edgy. I mean, so we have like this metal guy whose like jaw like opens up and he shoots flames out. It's like, okay. Um you had an old like witch character type thing, but you know, like those uh those bouncy seats that you get for your baby, like you hang them up in the door frame and they sit in them and they just bounce up and down. It was literally like a metal balloon above her head and then like a seat that came down and she was sitting in it and would bounce along the ground and move around. It's like, I don't know, they were stupid in my opinion. So they like the one main character had this like weird pistons coming out of his mouth, but it was like this Japanese samurai type dude. I guess he was kind of cool. He had like a katana.
Now, was this entire experience PvP, or were you guys playing other people?
Uh, it's a team based game, so it's like
And I
you
meant
aren't
to say,
playing against bots. There's
okay,
no bots, so it's your team against with. So there's the three of us and a random other person that was unfortunate to be teamed with us against another four people.
okay, that's what. Yeah,
And
I meant to say, was it
and
PVE or PvP?
yeah, so it's entirely PvP. Um, I guess there's a tutorial mode and you go against bots, but uh, yeah, I mean, we literally went 2 rounds without scoring any points, and that may be a level of our incompetence, but it's not like we're like inexperienced gamers that are playing the game. Um, it's very much where like it just felt like for an action type game, you can get killed really fast. Like, I mean, you get killed fast in Overwatch if you played that. It felt the same speed. Um, you definitely have to. I guess the game really wants you to play as a unit, and you have a healer and a tank, and you need to combine and kind of try to isolate the enemy and divide and conquer and pick them off. But it's pretty easy to get swarmed and then you respawn like 10 seconds later way back at the other part of the map and you have to go back up again. The other one is like they didn't I don't know if this is in the beta or if it's going to be like a like a Splatoon type thing where the different maps in the game modes are just like it rotates and you don't control it. So they have this one mode, for example, called uh I don't know. It reminded me of Gambit. So you have like energy cells or something on the map, and you have to go and you destroy the little crates and you collect the energy cells, and then you deposit the energy cells, and that's how you gain points, right? But they did it where it's like in phases. So you have a phase where you collect energy cells, but you can't deposit them yet. And then it's like, okay, that phase is over, and then you wait 30 seconds, and then the phase opens where you can deposit them, where both teams are kind of going to the same place to deposit them. And if you kill another player, you can take theirs and maybe get a few points for killing them. So it's like, it just, Gambit in Destiny 2 is like you destroy the environmental enemies, you get the moats and you deposit them back in the bank, and it's like a race. This was like a weird, it wasn't a race, but it was like collecting, and it just felt like it was a mode that was being pulled in two different directions, and I didn't enjoy that either. So the only thing that kept me wanting to play was just my own competitive, like I want to win one of these matches at some point. But after about 45 minutes to an hour, DB said literally like, well, I think I've played enough to get a taste for the game. Do you guys want to play anymore? And then Prime was like, no, I think that's enough. So we stopped. I was about to say I don't mind playing a little bit longer, but they were done. They wanted to check out. So um I said it's the beta, and my wife was like, well, did they have any problems? Did you give the developers any comments? And I was like, I didn't want to tell them that I felt like their game was fundamentally flawed. Like the foundation of their game was mechanically flawed. So no, I didn't say anything.
Yeah, it's tough. You got to have respect for that developer. This is Ninja Theory, so the guys who did Senua's Sacrifice and are doing obviously hard at work on Senua's Sacrifice 2. You'd also like to give Microsoft some props for buying them as a studio, bringing them into the Microsoft umbrella, and being the publisher of this game, which will be an Xbox exclusive and available on Windows 10 PCs. But man, this is a hard sell, and I mean, you have to assume that this was in development, at least in the very early stages when they were acquired by Microsoft already. But it's going to be so hard to launch a game, without taking it through early access. It's going to be really hard to launch a game now when people simply have available, PUBG, Fortnite, and Apex Legends, right? I mean,
Right.
that seems, it's kind of funny. We went through this very brief time. There was this big bang that went on where everybody was working on Battle Royale games. And that explosion has quickly receded and snapped back to where there are predominantly 3. And that, weirdly enough, seems to be enough for everyone. For people who have that taste for that type of online multiplayer gameplay, it seems those 3 games.
Well, I think that they're more shooting for the Overwatch demographic.
But I mean, there's at a certain point, those things are all in the same pool, right? It's
competitive,
it's competitive and cooperative. It's variations on flavors of competitive and cooperative online multiplayer, first person shooter or shooter play. And so, those 3 games, and then I was going to say, then in your next ring of games are your Destiny 2, Borderlands 3, and Overwatch. But again, as we often say, naturally you expect that over time the market's going to recede to a point where there's only 2 or 3 really big games, and that's all that there can be, right, to compete.
Well,
so
I give them props for trying to do a little bit different with the action aspect, but it just, like, all the characters have like a few like timing based combos and a few different special attacks that have cooldowns and everything, but it felt super chaotic. So I mean, you played like a Smash Brothers, right? I mean, you're in there, and if you can imagine being in Smash Brothers, but after getting hit like 3 or 4 times, your character dying, and then you have to wait and respawn, and then have to make your way through to the level again. It was that level of chaos when you're fighting, and quick and rapid, but then not in an environment where, like, yeah, people are beating each other up, but then and you have to knock them off the stage. I felt like somehow that the way that Smash Brothers balances against the chaos of the combat is the way you defeat the enemies. And with that chaos combined with HP and everything like you would have in a first person shooter, it felt too rapid. And I feel like there's going definitely be a barrier of entry for people, because I think the only way you can succeed in this game is if you have a team that actually knows how to coordinate with each other. And I don't know if, like you said, the market can only support so many games, and if you pop in and don't hit success and there's not much there for you, it feels like there's probably going to be a lot of people kicking the tires and then moving on. just because in order to succeed requires so much coordination and cooperation. So, all right. Speaking of, oh man, we're coming up on the hour. Speaking of Battle Royale, what brought you to Fortnite this past fortnight?
This is another instance of me failing out of the Star Citizen loop. So my assignment, what was up in my playlist, was Star Citizen, and I spent a few nights playing that. I had the joystick flight control system hooked up, and there was actually they're on their second or third iteration of the patch of the build that they dropped right before Christmas of last year, which was kind of a surprise drop because we were all thinking that 3.7 version was going to be out when they got back after the holiday break. They dropped, I think it's 3.7. They dropped 3.7. They have since iterated to, I think, a 3.7.1, a 3.8, and I think this version that was out most recently was 3.8.1. But I just hit some bugs. Like I spent a lot of time getting in a ship, flying all the way out to the other side of the galaxy, landing, was going into the space station, and like the space station doors, elevator doors wouldn't open. Like the control interface just wouldn't come up at the point. So I failed out of that loop and was looking for something else to play on PC that I already had installed on that PC. I wound up getting into Fortnite, and I hadn't been tracking it, but then, found out that the, Chapter 2, Season 2 was dropping that week. So I went ahead and spent a few days playing, the last few days of Chapter 2, Season 1, and amassing, a fair amount of loot, and then got into Chapter 2, Season 2 when it dropped. So, it has some fairly interesting changes. I guess they claim, I've seen an article posted that says that the map has changed. I guess I don't know the map well enough to know that it has changed, because I saw the map and thought it was the exact same map with some minor additions or almost swap outs. But during the Halloween season last year, they threw Zombie Island into the mix, which was just a place where it was high risk because of all the zombies walking around the island, but it was also increased reward because the loot on the island was better than in a lot of the other generic parts of the map. The other problem with venturing to Journey Island was, though, that you would make a lot of noise, and that would attract other enemy players who would come up and sit on top of a hill and be able to shoot you down on Zombie Island. So they've put a similar mechanism in place this year with the Agency Isle, which is relatively in the same place, or at least is the same geographic feature, where it is a point where you can jump down to off your initial drop. Loot and the level of weapons that you can find there are typically higher. But there's also, AI patrolling the area. You can get discovered and jumped. They will send reinforcements to converge on your so it could really be a very stressful event if you choose to drop there. What's funny this year is there are red telephone booths, like British-looking telephone booths, scattered around the island. So typically near the Agency Isle or other. The other thing is there are other agency outposts around on the map. So many times at the start of the season, I dropped down to a point thinking, I'm not going to drop on Agency Isle. That's too hectic. But you drop down to a house, which in past seasons has just been a normal house. But now either it or, a park or something adjacent to it has been taken over by henchmen of the agency. And so that's a problem. But there are these phone booths scattered around the island where if you go into the phone booth, you will change into a henchman disguise. And now when you go into the agency or these little outposts, as long as you don't walk like right next to one of the actual henchmen, you could typically walk around undercover. The other thing this allows you to do is on Agency Isle, and there's an oil platform also that is owned by the agency out on this other edge of the map. There are, I don't know what you call them, I know they have some specific name, but there are basically agency loot boxes in the lower levels. They are protected by facial recognition. So the only way to get them to unlock is you either have to have a henchman disguise on, or you can knock a henchman down. You can't kill them. Pick them up, carry them to one of these boxes, and then hit the facial recognition scan and hold them up so that it scans them, and then the box will unlock. And again, typically the point of that is because there are higher levels of loot, so there are, rare items or purples, as you might call them in Fortnite, and legendary items. So, basically the do loop of, the OODA loop of Fortnite is you land, you loot, and then you're trying to, as you run around the island, trying to get progressively higher, weapon color values so that by the time you are engaging with other players, you win the what I want to call it. You win the
Counter.
There was a game term that I was thinking of for it, but it escapes me right now. You win the rock paper scissors match by having a legendary weapon when they just have blues, or you have purples when they have greens or whatever. So that is the incentive for going into the Agency Isle or the oil refinery, and trying to get into these facial recognition loot crates. So
sounds like a lot of it has changed since I, dabbled in it a while back. It sounds like they're doing a lot to keep it fresh, I suppose.
Oh, that's always been the thing that people have complained about the Fortnite model. Epic is very much wired around what do we need to do? What's the next thing that we need to do to bring new players in? There's often criticism at them for not doing things that they need to retain people who have kind of already paid into the game. You might argue that that's really astute business on their part. But it definitely sometimes alienates the community of players who's already been engaged there for a while. And I know Prime has been playing a lot of Chapter 2 Season 2 as well, so maybe he'll be on sometime in the future of the GX show and can convey his experiences in Season 2 as well.
What was your best finish?
I have gotten a couple wins. Generally, I just play solos. Just because I find that it's more manageable. I don't have to worry about I don't like playing with randos. I don't have to worry about coordinating with somebody to find time to play concurrently. I will have, I'll be playing solos, and I will have some viewers coming in my live stream who will want to play, and so I'll connect with them. But in general, I just play solos, and out of that, I have gotten, a couple wins, and I think I played for about. I put in 25 hours total was kind of the game block that I'd set aside. Maybe the last 12 hours of that was after Season 2 dropped, and so within those 12 hours, I did get like 2 wins, I think, in matches. The rest, there was a decent handful of, top 10 finishes, top 25 finishes.
All right. The other 2 games I'm going to hit really rapid fashion. Death Stranding. I'm still playing that, and I know it was kind of not really one that you and DB, who are the other 2 that have PlayStations, were interested in. But I'm like, I still like picking it up, and I miss it when I don't play it. The one odd thing that I will mention about the game, compared to like maybe maybe not. I thought I was going to be playing it hardcore to progress the story, and I found I'm not that worried about moving to the next phase of the story, because it's not like this isn't Kiefer Sutherland in 24 or whatever. Like it's designed to be you're rebuilding an infrastructure, so you can be leisurely. It kind of feels that way, and in the area of the map that I'm in, I've been just doing extra delivery missions basically to boost my connection level for for the sights, and I want to max those out before I move to the next phase of the game. And I just like doing that. I do, one complaint I do have is if you get kind of caught by like the creepy BT ghosty things, it feels clunky, and I haven't really found a good way of like a good strategy yet of escaping that. At first I was trying to get my stuff and run away, but that doesn't work. I think I found though if you run away, eventually they go away and you can go back and get your stuff. But
So I believe they are working on a patch that makes. I think they're working on it. I thought it may have already dropped, but if not, if it hasn't, they're working on it. But it makes that BT cinematic that always pops like every single time you wind up engaging with them, makes that optional. So at least you don't have to sit there and chug through, that particular cutscene when you encounter the BTs.
It that's like the one thing that I kind of like, oh crap. But yeah, I'm still playing it. The other game, obviously, we're still playing Destiny 2. My one thing was we're doing this mission, and there's like a side mission where it's like you need to kill however many enemies with a machine gun. Well, we don't have machine guns yet, Vila and I. And so okay, fine. If we do this, whatever the forge, whatever they call it, mission, you get it. And, there was a lot of grinding that we had to do just to get this machine gun. Our first machine gun frame that we did in the Black Armory, I guess is what it's called. And we kind of commented, like, my wife was like, who has time to do this? And, grown-ups who game, there are some features in games that just aren't 100% aimed for us. So we got it, but it was like several successive nights of little gaming sessions is like all we can afford to do. So it's like,
so that's not going to go away in Destiny 2.
It's not. But I mean, it's just something that's what I noticed about Destiny 2 in my recent play.
No, it's been, I've talked in the past before how, it's a parent unfriendly game, even in the way that you can't pause it, right? So, I've mentioned before that, having, when my kids were smaller, when Destiny 2 came out, or even original Destiny, like I couldn't play it any time that they were awake, because at any moment I might have to stop, right? And you can't pause it. So one of my questions for you is, is it a powerful enough inoculation that you feel like you guys will eventually start wandering about looking for something that is a little more parent friendly and conducive, and not built around like raids and having to be able to invest, set aside like an 8-hour block of time to do quests for exotics?
Right now, I think we're just gonna. I mean, like right now, we enjoy the game and we enjoy the mechanics, and the nice thing is like the exotics aren't super necessary. Like I didn't have to get this. We didn't have to go through and do this. But we're not going to touch the raids. There's enough there that I think it's fun enough for us to hop in. But we'll see. But mentioning we have to play it after the kids are in bed. I do have one child that he has. I have one child with autism, so he doesn't go to bed with the rest of the kids. We actually keep him up a little bit later because that helps him sleep through the night. Kids with autism tend to have horrible sleep patterns, and if we keep him up an extra hour now, then I'm not up at 2:30 a.m. when he's just decided it's time to wake up. So, but so he'll be kind of futzing with like the tablet or something while we're playing. And he decides it's time for bed, and he'll start to like beg, and he knows where. He's very computer savvy, and I was in like the middle of a boss fight, and he's like hitting my escape key to like exit the game while I'm in the middle of the boss fight, and it's like, oh man, dude, don't don't do that. But yeah, it's we were forced to stop in the middle of the boss fight and take care of him. But yeah, we know how that goes. So no, we gave Anthem a try. Maybe we'll see how Anthem proceeds. But yeah, that's my Destiny story for this week. We don't have a future PickZ PlayZ yet because all of us have been busy at work and we didn't really discuss it in the Discord chat. So I will say, for now, the Game Pass or gaming service PickZ PlayZ is still outstanding for DB and Prime. And we will either come up with one in the interim and it will be a surprise PickZ PlayZ next time, or we'll just have a show without a PickZ PlayZ and just hit some more GX stuff. So beyond that, do you have anything to add? Any plugs?
Nope, not at all. We will be back probably next week. Although I haven't sorted out the schedule for March, so we don't know who will be on next week. But it should be a deep dive episode talking about whatever trend is going around the gaming industry news at that point in time.
All right. So for Gascles Stamus, I am Swiss Guard. Thanks for listening. Keep gaming. Have fun. Good night.